He was already packing up his camera equipment when I finally worked up the courage to approach his desk, and something about the way his shoulders tensed when he heard my footsteps made me think he'd been hoping everyone would just leave quietly. It was my third week in the photography night class at the Brooklyn Community Arts Center, and I still felt like I was drowning. Everyone else seemed to know what they were doing with their expensive cameras and technical jargon, while I sat in the back clutching my father's old Canon like a lifeline, trying to make sense of apertures and shutter speeds and depth of field. But it wasn't the photography that had me staying after class. It was the way our instructor, Professor James Novak, looked at the world through his lens during our demonstrations, like he was seeing something the rest of us were missing, something beautiful and broken and achingly real. Before I continue this, hit that subscribe button. I post one real story every single day. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'm always curious who my stories are reaching. The classroom was emptying out around us, students chattering about their weekend plans and next week's assignment as they headed for the door. But I stayed rooted to my spot, watching James carefully wrap each piece of equipment in cloth before placing it in a worn leather bag that looked like it had traveled the world. He was probably in his early 40s, with dark hair that was starting to show silver and the kind of weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors in difficult places. There was something guarded about him, something that suggested he'd seen too much and learned to keep the world at arm's length. But when he was teaching, when he was talking about light and shadow and the way a single photograph could tell an entire story, something in his expression would soften, and I'd catch glimpses of the passionate artist hiding beneath the careful facade. Professor Novak? My voice came out smaller than I'd intended, and I cleared my throat. Could I ask you something? He looked up from his packing, and for a moment I saw what looked like resignation flash across his features. Like he'd been expecting this conversation and dreading it. If this is about the assignment, Maya, the parameters are pretty straightforward. 24 shots, black and white, documenting life in your neighborhood. It's not about the assignment. James paused in his careful wrapping of a telephoto lens, his attention finally fully focused on me. Up close, I could see that his eyes were a deep brown, almost black, and there were fine lines around them that spoke of years spent squinting through viewfinders in bright sun. What's it about then? I took a breath, knowing that what I was about to say would either make me sound like a complete amateur or reveal something I wasn't sure I was ready to share. It's about the way you taught us to see today. When you were talking about finding beauty in broken things, about how the most powerful photographs are often the ones that show people at their most vulnerable. I shifted my camera bag to my other shoulder. You said photography is about capturing truth, not just pretty pictures. That's right. But what do you do when the truth is too painful to look at? Something flickered across James's face, too quick for me to read, but I saw his hands still on the lens he was wrapping. What do you mean? I hesitated, knowing I was about to cross a line from student-teacher small talk into something much more personal. My father died 6 months ago. Cancer. And I inherited his camera, all his equipment, these boxes of photographs he took over the years. My voice caught slightly. Everyone keeps telling me I should go through them, organize them, maybe even display some of them. But every time I try, I can't. Because seeing him in those pictures, seeing how happy he was, how alive, it makes his absence feel impossible. James set down the lens and looked at me directly, and I saw something in his expression that I recognized. Pain. The kind of deep, careful pain that comes from understanding exactly what someone else is going through. So you're taking this class to avoid dealing with his photographs? I'm taking this class because I thought maybe if I learned to see the world the way he did, I could understand why he loved it so much. Why he spent every weekend driving around upstate New York looking for old barns and abandoned farms and perfect moments of light. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. But mostly I'm just taking pictures of random stuff and hoping something will click. James was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was trying to decide something important. Maya, can I ask you something? Sure. Why photography? Why not painting or writing or music therapy or any of the dozen other ways people process grief? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. It just felt right, I guess. Like maybe if I could see what he saw, I could keep some part of him alive. Show me. What? Show me one of your father's photographs. I stared at him, my heart suddenly racing. I don't have any with me. You're lying. The words weren't accusatory, just matter of fact, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. How do you know? Because I can see your phone in your bag, and it's in a case with a small photograph stuck to the back. And because grief makes us carry pieces of the people we've lost everywhere we go. I looked down at my bag, where the corner of my phone case was indeed visible, and felt something crumble in my chest. He was right. I did carry one of my father's photographs with me everywhere. A picture he'd taken of me when I was 12, laughing at something just out of frame, completely unaware of the camera. It's not one of his artistic shots, I said, pulling out my phone and carefully removing the small print from the case. It's just me. James took the photograph gently, holding it like something precious, and studied it for a long moment. When he looked up, there was something different in his expression. Something warmer. Maya, this is beautiful. It's just a snapshot. No, it's not. He held the photograph up to the fluorescent classroom lights, and I could see him analyzing the composition, the light, the emotional weight of the image. Look at the way he captured the light in your hair, the genuine joy in your expression. Look at the depth of field, how he made you the absolute focus, while everything else falls away softly. I looked at the photograph I'd seen thousands of times, but now I was seeing it through James's eyes, through the eyes of someone who understood the technical craft behind the emotional impact. He knew exactly what he was doing, James continued. This isn't a snapshot. This is a love letter. The words hit me like a physical blow, and I felt tears spilling down my cheeks before I could stop them. I'm sorry, I stammered, reaching for the photograph. I shouldn't have. Maya. James's voice was gentle but firm. Don't apologize for feeling something. I just miss him so much. And I thought maybe if I could learn to take pictures like he did, I could feel close to him again. But all I'm doing is taking terrible shots of fire hydrants and pigeons and feeling like I'm failing at the one thing that connected us. James was quiet for a moment, still holding my father's photograph with careful reverence. Can I tell you something? He asked finally. Okay. I used to be a photojournalist. War correspondent, conflict zones, natural disasters. For 15 years, I traveled the world documenting the worst things humans do to each other and the most devastating things nature can unleash. I stared at him, suddenly understanding the weight I'd sensed in him from the beginning. What happened? Syria. 3 years ago. I was embedded with a group documenting the refugee crisis, and we came under fire. James's voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling slightly. I lost my camera, my equipment, and... He paused, touching his left temple where I could now see a faint scar. I lost my ability to look through a viewfinder without having a panic attack. James. I haven't taken a real photograph in 3 years, Maya. I teach because I still love the art form, but I can't practice it anymore. Every time I try to lift a camera to my eye, I'm back in that street in Aleppo, hearing the sound of bullets and knowing that people are dying while I'm trying to capture their suffering. What would you do if you were in my place? Tell me in the comments. I didn't know what to say. Here was this man I'd been admiring for his artistic eye and technical skill, and he was telling me he couldn't even use a camera anymore. But you teach it so beautifully, I said finally. The way you talk about light and composition and finding truth in images, you make it sound like the most important thing in the world. Because it is. At least, it was for me. James looked down at my father's photograph again. But looking at this, seeing what your father captured here, it reminds me why I fell in love with photography in the first place. What do you mean? I spent 15 years taking pictures of the worst of humanity. Death, destruction, suffering. I told myself I was documenting important truths, and maybe I was. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that truth isn't just about pain. Truth is also about joy, about love, about a father capturing his daughter's laughter because he wants to remember that moment forever. James handed the photograph back to me, and when our fingers brushed, I felt something electric pass between us. Maya, you're not failing at connecting with your father through photography. You're just trying to skip ahead to the end without learning the language first. I don't understand. Your father didn't start by taking perfect pictures. He started by learning to see. And the way to learn to see is to keep looking, keep shooting, keep failing until suddenly you're not failing anymore. But what if I never get there? What if I never take a picture that means something? James stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, something clean and warm that made me want to step closer instead of backing away. Maya, can I ask you to do something for me? What? Stay after next week's class too. Bring your camera and one of your father's photographs, not a snapshot this time, but one of his artistic shots. I want to help you understand what he was seeing when he took it. You do that. I'd like to try. There was something in his voice, something that sounded almost hopeful, that made my heart race. James, why are you willing to help me? He was quiet for a moment, looking at me with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Because talking to you about your father's work, seeing the love and skill in that photograph, it's the first time in 3 years that I've felt excited about photography again. And I think maybe helping you learn to see the way he saw might help me remember why I love this art form in the first place. What if it brings back the panic attacks? Then I'll deal with that. But Maya, what if it doesn't? What if working with someone who loves photography for all the right reasons helps me find my way back to it? We stood there in the empty classroom, surrounded by the lingering smell of developer chemicals and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights, and I felt something shift between us. Something that went beyond student and teacher, beyond shared grief, beyond the careful boundaries we'd been maintaining. Okay, I said. I'll stay after next week. Good. But James? I need you to know something. What? This isn't just about photography for me anymore. His breath caught, and I saw something flare in his eyes. Maya, I know there's an age difference. I know you're my teacher. I know this is complicated in about a dozen different ways. I took a breath. But sitting here with you, talking about art and loss and the way we see the world, it's the most connected I've felt to another person since my father died. Maya, I'm 43 years old. You're 25. You're my student, and I'm a mess who can't even pick up a camera without falling apart. You're also the first person who's made me feel like my grief might actually lead somewhere meaningful instead of just being something I have to endure. James stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. This is dangerous territory, he said quietly. I know. If we cross this line, there's no going back. I know. You could get hurt. I could get hurt. Hell, I could lose my job. I know. He reached up slowly, carefully, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. Maya, what are you asking me for? I'm asking you to consider the possibility that maybe we found each other for a reason. Maybe you need someone who reminds you why art matters, and maybe I need someone who understands that loving someone doesn't end when they die. James closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were bright with something that looked like hope mixed with terror. This is insane. Probably. We should take this slow. Figure out if this is real or just two broken people finding comfort in shared understanding. We should definitely do that. Good. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, made him look younger and less burdened. Because I have a feeling your father would want me to be very careful with his daughter's heart. 8 months later, James picked up a camera for the first time in 3 years to photograph our engagement. He said he wanted to capture the moment for the same reason my father had captured my laughter, because some truths are too beautiful not to preserve. We still teach photography together now, James and I. He handles the technical instruction while I help students understand the emotional weight of the medium. And every week, someone stays after class to ask us about art or loss, or the courage it takes to keep looking for beauty in a world that can be overwhelmingly dark. Before I go, thank you. These stories are real. They're mine. And I share one every day. If you want to hear more, subscribe. Last month, we finally went through all of my father's photographs together, James and I. We found dozens of shots that took my breath away, images that showed me my father wasn't just a weekend hobbyist, but a true artist who understood light and shadow and the sacred act of bearing witness to the world. James is helping me organize an exhibition of his work, and seeing my father's vision through the eyes of someone who truly understands the craft has been like getting to know him all over again.